Zilean really is the father of time in League of Legends, not only because he's got a big-ass clock on his back like he's best friends with Flavor Flav,
Yeah, boy!
but also because he was the first champion released alongside Singed after the original cast of 17. And even though this kooky old man doesn't have 20 dashes, paragraph descriptions for his abilities, or six-pack abs, he's still viable enough as a support to have been picked by T1 in the World Finals of 2021. But even with that exposure, Zilean still has never really hit true meta mainstream usage, always hovering around the middle of the pack for pick rate at about 5%, and also having a 50% win rate. It's surprising to me that we don't see more Zilean support at all levels of play. However, there is one Zilean support player who's been so dedicated to the champion that he's put thousands of games into him, and while doing so, reached the highest peak of Challenger solo queue. The person we're analyzing today is known as Tempos, amateur League of Legends player, Twitter meme lord, and mental health promoter who has played an amazing amount of Zilean games over the past few years with some of the highest win rates over so many games that I've ever seen in Challenger. Tempos started playing League around the tail end of Season 2, right when Rengar had just come out. Once Season 3 had begun, he decided to take his skill set to Ranked, where he only filled. See, back in Season 3, there was no pick your role and then queue up. There was only queue up and then call your role in chat as fast as you can. So naturally, almost the same as today, the two roles that were never chosen much were jungle and support, in which he got support around 80% of his games. After that long Season 3, he decided to fully commit to support in Season 4, and by Season 5, he found his main in Zilean Support, dumping hundreds of games into him to push himself all the way into Diamond by Season 7. And also when Season 7 began, he had just begun college at Illinois State University, where his competitive mindset and will to become a stronger player only increased with his goal of joining the League of Legends esports team that they had. He did get to join the ISU team in Season 9 after pushing himself to Grandmaster in solo queue with mostly Zilean support, but also hundreds of games on other supports as well. After finishing his zoology degree, there's probably a joke here about NA solo queue and zoology, but I'm just not gonna make it. After finishing his zoology degree, he moved on to joining C9's amateur team, where he learned a lot and was rostered for 2 months there until both parties decided to part ways. Know that there was some drama involved here, but that's really not important. What is important is that Tempos is good enough to make both an amateur and college team, and more than likely one day we will see him in the LCS. Now, in Season 11, he's in grad school at ISU, and once again has rejoined their team to reunite with some players that he speaks very highly of. In solo queue, the highest peak he has hit so far is top 12. Right now, he has 2 accounts in High Challenger, hovering around 1000 LP each, where he still plays a lot of Zilean and streams a lot of his games also. Make sure you pay him a follow on his Twitter or Twitch, both linked below, as he continues to climb higher and higher to this day. While Zilean may want to just fast forward past this part, we're first going to have to talk about his weaknesses. For one, Zilean's early game is some of the weakest in the league, making it basically impossible to do anything without outside help. Also, he's not the most aggressive champion. You'll typically find yourself capitalizing on your enemy's mistakes more than being able to push forward yourself. On top of that, his hitbox is huge and he's super fragile, so without great positioning throughout the game, you could find yourself being completely useless. And finally, and most importantly, Zilean is over 3,500 years old, and with that type of age, the man is probably just a little senile. But even with all of these potential problems, Tempos has found a way to make it work. From the mouth of Tempos himself, level 1 as Zilean is basically like you don't exist. You're hardly even a champion yet. He does grab his Q at level 1, or Time Bomb, which is a skill shot ability that can stick on an enemy or friendly champion and also minions, and then after a delay will explode, doing damage in an AoE around that target. Before minions spawn, and throughout the game, he uses these to check bushes because wherever they are, give him and his team sight, even if they're attached to an enemy. The whole game long, Zilean is so squishy that if there's a 1% chance that an enemy is in a bush and you're not using a bomb to check it, you're basically trolling. Most of the time you want to hit an enemy champion with your bomb, but there are some situations where you can attach it to a teammate and they can deliver it for you, or just slap it on the floor and have some zone control. In lane at level 1, Tempo stays super far back, regularly conceding the lane early because he knows that all he can do is toss a bomb. It's near impossible to win at this point of the game for Zilean, so missing a minion or two instead of dying is well worth it if your enemy understands your disadvantage and pushes you off the wave. If they do that, it's not really a huge deal missing that EXP because of Zilean's passive or time in a bottle. You don't have to do much with time in a bottle. Literally just existing in the game, the passive will start to store EXP every 5 seconds. If that stored EXP is enough to level up one of your teammates, you can right-click them, channel for 1 second, and pass the EXP off to them while also receiving that EXP yourself. It's a bit uninspired and uninteractive for a passive, and most of the time Tempos tells me he just dumps it on his ADC when it's available to avoid accidentally using it in a team fight. But if you do have a hyper carry on your team that scales well with levels, think someone like Kassadin or Kale or some strong jungler, you should be saving it for them. At level 2, you're still not really a champion yet, but Tempos is still much better off than level 1 because he levels up his W or Rewind. Rewind, when used, reduces the cooldown of both Zilean's Q and E by 10 seconds, and that's it. So since Time Bomb, even at level 1, has a 10-second cooldown, this means you can cast 2 of them back to back if you do Zilean's most basic combo of Q, W, Q. If you land 2 time bombs on the exact same unit, friend or foe, the first time bomb will immediately detonate, doing damage like it normally would, but also stunning anyone in the area as well. Throughout the game, Tempos uses this stun to catch enemies by himself, but bombs can be somewhat difficult to hit, so if he has someone else with hard CC on his team, he can more reliably use the combo to stack his stun afterwards. Do remember that the stun will only activate if both bombs have stuck on the same unit, so throwing them on the floor in hopes of a stun won't do much aside from potentially zoning out enemies in a small walkway. The double bomb combo does get much easier to hit when Tempos hits his first power spike on Zilean at level 3 when he levels up his E or Time Warp. With this ability, you can point and click choose someone and either reduce or increase their movement speed depending on if they're an allied champion or enemy champion, and that's it. But while I say that's it, it's actually a very strong ability to apply a slow or speed up that's already at a significant 40% at level 1, and at level 5 going all the way up to 99%. With that slow, you unlock Zilean's advanced, in quotation marks, combo. Now, you'll first use your E, slowing them down, then use your Q, tossing a bomb on their head, cast your W, lowering the cooldown on your abilities, and then finally toss another Q on them, detonating the first bomb and stunning everyone. It's pretty foolproof and effective, but make sure you're not stepping into someone who can immediately 100-0 you, or you'll regret it. Beyond the advanced combo, you can do other things that mass slowdown or movement speed allow you to do, like kite an entire enemy team, speed up your teammates to better kite or chase down an enemy, or make an enemy like Udyr, who has no gap close, completely useless. This ability has a lot of potential for synergy with some champions on your own team. Champions who want to go in but have no means of doing it themselves work great with Zilean. Think of champs like Skarner, the aforementioned Udyr, or Darius even. Beyond all other champs though, Hecarim seems to be the most disgusting combo you can pick with Zilean since he gains additional damage based on movement speed. I saw too many stomps whenever Tempos got a Hecarim jungler on his team. Once you're around level 3 or 4, you are now a true champion, but still don't want to play aggressive. If you can hit a bomb on someone for some poke, sure, do it, but most of your early laning phase should center around playing back and safe, and either waiting for your jungler to gank or capitalize when the enemy bot lane tries to go aggressive on you. Zilean in laning phase plays best against enemy aggression. If someone dives too deep, punishing them with your combo and damage from bombs is normally enough for Tempos to grab a kill or at least a summoner. And even if the enemy doesn't go aggressive, it's fine to go even with your lane. Going even, Tempos tells me, is winning on Zilean because a lot of his value comes in mid-game and team fights. Finally, at level 6, Tempos takes his ultimate or Chrono Shift. Zilean places a protective time rune on a targeted allied champion for 5 seconds, and if they die within that time, they will instead be resurrected and healed after a 3-second delay. It's pretty self-explanatory. You mostly want to use this on your carries when they're very low health to avoid enemies waiting out that 5-second window to then kill them. Ideally, you never want to use your ultimate on yourself because it is so much more valuable to save a carry with. But if the enemy team is going balls deep on Tempos and dumping everything they have on him in an attempt to kill him, sometimes it's inevitable that he has to use it on himself. You may think now with a revive in his ultimate, or maybe even before this, that Tempos, like many high elo challenger supports, would roam the map a bunch. And while he does sometimes when it's appropriate, that's not really in his game plan. Most games, he does still help his mid lane by warding up the surrounding river, but that's really it. Ganking with Zilean early is pretty risky considering being under leveled and taking a 2v2 against something like a mid and jungler or a top and jungler would more than likely mean death. So instead of roaming the map, he prefers to stay bottom after after warding for his mid laner to ensure he scales up into the mid game. Once the tower falls and mid game has officially started, instead of still hanging out bot, Tempos then just simply moves middle instead. Mid to late game is when Zilean is the strongest, and that strength comes from him being able to participate in big fights, or really just saving someone with his ultimate. So being in the middle lane allows him to be just one time warp away from any game-changing moment. He uses everything we just previously talked about earlier to easily win these small scraps and prepare for bigger team fights. In team fights, the most important thing I learned from talking with Tempos is you need to have immaculate positioning on Zilean. And the way he described having that positioning is that you should be the backline to your backline. You should be playing so far back and so safe, because just like earlier in the game, if you're using your ultimate on yourself instead of one of your key carries, the team fight is probably lost. He does start to move in closer once the enemy team instead is focused on someone else to use his bomb combo or to help speed up or slow down someone. He also explained that you should be playing a bit of a hit and run play style in team fights, moving in to try to land your double bomb and use your other abilities, and then moving further back and waiting for cooldowns so you're able to do it again. If you're able to land stuns and blow enemy cooldowns by saving a teammate with your ultimate, then the power can completely turn to your team's favor, meaning some easy wins. For his build, he starts every game with a Spell Thief's Edge. He typically first builds boots and a Dark Seal early and prefers Lucidity boots, but can really build any boot if it's appropriate against the enemy team. Well, any boot besides Zerk or Greaves. For his Mythic, he almost always takes Shirelius for additional movement speed, and so he doesn't always have to use his E to get in. He also will build Azonias if the enemy team has a lot of divers or AD kill potential, Chemtech Putrefier if they have a lot of healing, Banshee's Veil if they have a lot of magic damage, or Cosmic Drive if he's winning and none of the other previous conditions are met. Besides boots, he can really build any item first, and he told me he also could really purchase anything in a game if it feels right or the enemy team calls for it. So be adaptive with your build and use this as a starting point for when you try your first Zilean game. Oh, and you didn't think that I wasn't going to mention that if the game goes long enough or he needs some more oomph in his build, he'll buy an Elixir of Sorcery, and throughout the whole game, as a good support does, he's buying control wards and maybe a ward stone if the game goes very late. For his runes, he takes Summon Ares since it synergizes well with most of Zilean's abilities, and Guardian was nerfed, Mana Flow Band for more mana regeneration, Transcendence for more ability haste, and Gathering Storm for more AP over time. He switches up his secondary page a lot, but most recently has been taking Ghost Poro for more vision and AP, and you could take Zombie Ward if you like that better too, and Ingenious, Ultimate, or Relentless Hunter, he's really been playing with all of them. For his flex runes, he takes one ability haste, one adaptive force, and armor in the majority of his games, but potentially magic resist as well if he's against something like 2 AP champions in the bot lane. Zilean Support works well with ADCs with CC like Ashe or Varus, and APCs with CC like Syndra or Swain. Zilean Support struggles against mobile ADCs like Lucian or Caitlyn, or poke supports like Xerath or Zyra. If you guys like this week's video, I heavily suggest you check out last week's video on Support Rumble. See you guys next time. Peace.